Welcome back to the channel, Warhammer Man back in the studio, and today we're taking a look at the new squat reveal. So obviously we just saw quite a few reveals for Chaos from the Warhammer Fest community sort of like unveiling, but now we see our next model for the squats or leagues of Votann. As expected, they focus primarily on Chaos, but we did see a new squat model, which is pretty awesome. I was anticipating a vehicle and an HQ being shown off for the squats, but we only got one of them. So let's take a look. If you are new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for Warhammer 40,000, Kill Team Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, Warcry, pretty much anything to do with tabletop wargaming, especially Games Workshop or D&D related. So revealed, the Leagues of Votann get their own trikes. So obviously this was one of our speculations. We saw trikes in the past, so not a surprise to see this, but it definitely is coming in a new form. Last month, we saw the first new miniature for the Leagues of Votann in 3 decades. We're well overdue for another reveal, so start your engines, space miners, and check out the fresh take on classic Road Trader era design. So there is a little video you can watch. You've heard of flying pigs? Well, what about flying hog? For anyone who hasn't been following the Leagues of Votann since parachute pants and giant shoulder pads were in fashion, here's the kind of trike the kin were riding around in the 1980s. So this is the individual trike model that they had back in the day. Obviously like an old school like chopper trike with some bolters on there, and clearly a space dwarf, no real armor or anything. They also had a variant version with a second gunner on the back, similar to what we see in the Necromunda Ashways quads that recently came out for Orruk. So here is the new version, much cooler in my opinion. Thought the old squat trikes were noticeably less airborne. You can see a number of key design cues that carried over the Hernkin Pioneer. So that is what it's called, the Hernkin Pioneer. Obviously the kin is the new name for the squats, so this is their Pioneer bike, as well as a few places where the technology of the Leagues of Votann has clearly diverged from the Imperium. There's no mistaking this for a Space Marine bike. So here we see this is the trike. Overall, I really like the look of it. I think it looks great. I think the rider looks great. I think the actual bike looks great. This is clearly, obviously, like their kind of like scout force or recon, like forward objective claiming kind of squad. Not very heavily armed. We don't really know much about the armor itself. So we know the squats themselves have a 4-up armor save, and we know they have a toughness 4. So assuming this is going to be in line with what we typically see from bikers, most of the time what we see from bikes is an additional wound, an additional toughness, and then some additional armaments, but no actual extra save improvement. So assuming this is in line with what we typically see from our bike units in general, I would assume this is going to have toughness 5, 2, possibly 3 wounds, and 4-up armor save. Obviously some increased movement, which will be huge for the squats because they are only 5 movement. So I would assume this is going to be probably like 10 or 12, something like that. Pretty cool overall, though. I really like it. I think it's going to be a nice, useful unit. Obviously, in an army that is typically a little on the slower side, some fast-moving, objective-claiming units will be key, obviously. Now, overall, look-wise, and the idea of the trike versus, like the hover trike versus the regular trike, again, I really like it. It makes a lot more sense to me to have like a hover trike for off-road crazy scenarios than a regular one. So the hover idea makes perfect sense to me as well. And then on top of that, Games Workshop typically doesn't do well with their sort of like off-road suspension or like ride heights and stuff like that. So in general, I have to say I much prefer the idea of hovering bikes over just regular off-roading bikes that don't appear like they would function well off-road. So aesthetically, I think it's great. The actual pilot or driver of the bike looks really cool as well. I really like the cloak, or I don't know what you want to call it, jacket, with like the fur around the collar, and then you can see the squat armor underneath. The gun looks pretty cool, the one on the bike, and then also handheld. We should see some more pictures of that if we keep on scrolling. Overall look of the bike is cool. Definitely kind of reminds me a little bit of like the aesthetic of like a Castellan robot a little bit. Also has a bunch of like equipment and stuff strapped to it. So it makes sense that they would be like ahead of the force, you know, maybe a few days ahead of the force, kind of doing their own thing, camping out, reconning. So really like it. Really like it overall. And check out the tough and testy triker holding the handlebars of the Hernkin Pioneer. It's our first look at the female kin, clad in a coat and goggles worthy of any aviating outrider. It's the leagues of Votann. When the clan family calls, everyone answers. Okay, so this is a female kin. I mean, you can't really tell. I guess there's sort of some female facial traits a little bit. There's no beard, so I guess that points you in the right direction. Hard to tell without being able to see any kind of hair or any body, the difference between male and female. I'm not really sure it really matters, like in dwarves or space dwarves. I think like Lord of the Rings kind of throw back a little bit. You know, they talk about the dwarves, and you know, the female dwarves have beards as well. I think they specifically said that the kin were not necessarily going to be bearded like dwarves. So I think as long as they're armored, we're not going to be able to really tell the difference between male and female. I'm not sure if people actually care or not, but it is an interesting observation, I guess, that this is a female kin. I'm sure there's probably going to be some characters or some variants where it's more clear one way or the other. I hope that that's not true and they are going to have beards. I really like the look and overall aesthetic of actual dwarves, and then especially the idea of like dwarves in space. So without the beards, I'm not sure they're really going to look the same. The necromunda models they released were really cool. So far, the other squat we've seen was like okay, rather underwhelming to tell you the truth, but I think kind of gave us the picture of what to expect. This one sits somewhere in between. I think this is a really cool model, but we really still don't get the idea of, are these going to be like mohawked, crazy haired dwarves with beards, or are they going to be like toned down, just smaller version of humans without all the cool, funny, eccentric facial hair? So I don't know. I mean, it could go either way. Again, still too early for me to tell how I feel about the range. I think overall I like the aesthetic so far. I'm just not sure one way or another if I'm going to be like, oh man, I wish they wouldn't have went so far away from dwarves. Because this is borderline for me, sort of like Hobbit-y. This reminds me a little more of a Hobbit than a dwarf, if that makes sense. Like the features and size and everything like that kind of points more towards like hobbits, which that's okay. I mean, we have like rattling snipers and stuff like that, which are kind of like hobbits in 40k. I hope they don't go too far in that direction, because I really do like the aesthetic and the idea and everything of the dwarves. So now let's talk about the weapons. So the weapon on the actual bike here has, you know, clearly a like drum feed ammo thing. And again, this angle specifically maybe is what makes me think of Castellan robots. The weapon looks a lot like a Castellan robots weapon, some sort of kind of like autocannon type deal. The bike itself and like the round over like the square look of your regular Space Marines gives me kind of like that Castellan robot kind of look, or like that UR-25 like Men of Iron look to it. But I do really like it. I like the shovel and gear and everything on back, the light on top. The other gun appears to be, this looks basically like a revolver shotgun, if that makes sense. So a regular shotgun, but instead of having like 1 or 2 or 10 rounds loaded in there, it has basically like a 6-shooter. Pretty cool, pretty unique. I think that's probably what they're going to get armament wise. We see like the Scout Space Marines have like the bolters on their bikes and then shotguns. So I don't think it's unrealistic to think this is going to be some sort of like maybe longer ranged shotgun. So maybe instead of a 12-inch range, 18-inch range, because it has like the extended length on the barrel, tells you it's probably meant for longer range combat. And then this being essentially something like some sort of autocannon, or maybe even more similar to like the Castellan robots weapons. Overall, it looks very cool. I definitely like the aesthetic of this model. Hover trikes aren't the only new additions to the far future. Check out the other mass Warhammer 40,000 reveals. So there wasn't a ton of other stuff. There was only one squat. I was really hoping they were going to do a character. I think we'll get one sometime in the future. I would have absolutely loved to see some type of the variance in the range as well. So like we saw one random trooper. There's probably going to be 9 other squats that go along with that model. I would love to see the full squad and some of the potential, like some of the more extreme looks that we have, and then obviously the one we saw pictured was pretty basic. So, and I think the biggest thing for me is going to be like their hair and facial hair. So again, seeing this model doesn't answer a lot of questions for me. I mean, it's definitely cool. I like it. I think it's great, and I like where the range is going, but it doesn't answer any of the hair or facial hair questions, or like how differently you could build the kits. Because I love the idea of having male and female squats. That's great. I mean, that's sure. Also, if you're going to have a model that is basically unisex and the face is the only thing that makes a difference, I would love to see, faces like this that are, I would say clearly female, but I don't know if clearly female is out there, but described as female. And then I would love to see some more traditional, crazy like mohawk hair, big burly beards, like, the typical kind of stuff that you would see from dwarves in general. And then you can say, oh, this is my female dwarf with a beard and a mohawk. That's fine. This is my female dwarf, that we see here in this picture. That's fine. Or, alternatively, you can play a slightly more traditional, male version with a beard and mohawk or spike hair or, whatever. So, again, just my opinion. I like when they do the diversity of the kits. I like when they build so you can basically have like feminine or masculine heads, and then the bodies are kind of just whatever. That's cool. I'm okay with that. It gives people options, and I'm all about options. But I would like to see some of the options for this range so we can really get an idea. So if you took the head off of this model completely, there was no head on this model at all, and they just showed us, the rider without a head and the bike and everything, I would say this is great. This is absolutely awesome. So for me, I don't hate the head or anything like that. I like the idea of like aviators and like the cap and everything, but I really just want to see some more heads. That was my biggest thing for the initial squat reveal as well. We see this one squat with this one face, and it's overall underwhelming. I would like to see a squat next to a regular Marine and maybe a guardsman or something like that, and then I would like to see a bunch of different like faces or heads or whatever. Again, that's just my opinion. Overall, I think this looks really, really cool. I definitely like the added in like suspension components for the front of it and suspension for the rear. It's cool to see some like coilovers, and again, like the shovel and equipment, the light on top, the sheath for the shotgun right here. I really like the overall look of this. I think it's great. Tons of awesome detail. It looks like nothing else currently in the range. There's nothing else that looks even close to this. Not only did they bring back the trike, but they made it a hover trike. So in my opinion, this is exponentially better. When we look at this thing and you think, okay, this is pretty cool, I like it, and then you look at the old version of it and you say, okay, this was whatever 40 years ago basically was when these were out, 30, 40, somewhere around there. There's no comparison. The new one is just absolutely sick. It's absolutely stunning. But again, I just got to see some more heads, a little bit more out of the line. I think regardless, you could probably do some pretty awesome head swaps. So even if they do come out with some kind of like lame, toned down heads for all these guys, I think you'll be able to probably do some pretty awesome conversions. Maybe just with some regular like dwarf heads, some fire slayers or something like that. But I hope they don't go that route. So, but realistically, I think the next we've now seen, this isn't technically a vehicle, but it is. So we've gotten one trooper so far. We've gotten one vehicle so far. So I think at this point in time, it's, the next thing we see is going to be a character. So super excited for that. Really would like to see a squat kill team show up. That would be awesome. Like Space Marines versus squats would be pretty freaking cool for the next kill team set. But as far as I'm concerned for now, very cool. I like where they're going with the range. I'm just curious to see what we're going to get for like head options. I would absolutely love it if this is the look they want to go with head-wise, and like the other one we saw, I'm cool with that. That's okay. But I hope they include also a bunch of more traditional heads, like crazy dwarf heads, big bushy beards and, crazy mohawks and hairstyles and all that stuff. Will they do that? I don't know. It kind of seems like it's going to be difficult to do beards with the armor the way it is. So maybe we're not going to see the big beards, or maybe there'll be sort of like a bushy beard that you can kind of see hints of, but it disappears like into the armor, which I would be okay with as well. So we'll see. We'll see how they go with it. I hope they don't get rid of the cool hairstyles and beards, but after seeing these first two models, I'm starting to feel like maybe that's the direction they're going with it. I don't love it, but we'll see how they execute it, because the idea of it doesn't seem that cool to me, but this looks okay. Would look better with a crazy hairstyle and a beard, but it is what it is. But that being said, going to go ahead and wrap it up there. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out some of our other stuff. We put out at least one video a day. We're going to have some more videos coming out later on for the Age of Sigmar reveals as well. You can obviously check out all this stuff on your own at Warhammer Community or on Games Workshop's YouTube if you want to watch their reveal video or listen to what they have to say as well. But that's it for today. If you do enjoy this type of content, reactions, reviews, news, all kinds of painting, modeling, conversion, magnetization tutorials, make sure to like and subscribe. But that is it for today. For your Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team, Necromunda, Age of Sigmar, and Warcry content, make sure to like and subscribe to Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm out of here.